So you know that your family once owned a gin company and some pubs. But how surreal would it be to find out it wasn't just any gin company, but one of the most important brands in the UK ever? I'm Susan Schwartz, your drinking companion, and this is Lush Life Podcast. Every week, we are inspired to live life one cocktail at a time by the best in the industry. Milo Walker, brand ambassador and heir to Nicholson Gin, discovered that his family produced not only politicians and cricketers, but also gin distillers. There might not have been a Lord's cricket ground if Nicholson Gin hadn't stepped in. It was also Harry Craddock's, the Savoy's most legendary bartender's preferred choice for many of the hotel's most famous cocktails. Milo talks us through his recent education on all things Nicholson Gin.
Yeah, so I think the process started back in 2010. We were living in Cape Town, South Africa, and my dad, we always knew we had a gin brand, but we never really sort of pursued it or anything like that. And Dad started looking at it in 2010, and we just got really excited about the fact that to bring back this historic brand back into the fold, back into a family-owned company, was just something really exciting. And that's what I first heard about it then. At first, I didn't really know what the process would be. But after that, it took about 6 years to actually get to where we are today.
So growing up, you had no idea that you had this historical brand in your family?
I knew at some extent, but I didn't know exactly the specifics of the brand. I knew broadly.
What broadly did you know?
Well, I knew William Nicholson, and I knew the connection to cricket and the pubs, but I didn't know the heritage of our contribution to gin and what it is today. And just the family link that it's so strong, and it's just kept on going for all those years. I just didn't know. So
now you have to tell us what it is.
Yes.
So I guess it's been an education for you as well as your whole family to learn all of this.
Yes.
So talk me through kind of what you learned and how, you processed all this fantastic information.
Well, I mean, it's just sort of, think about our sort of gin is that it's got so many angles. I first discovered that the cricketing angle at Lord's back in sort of 2011 when I was on cricket tour here. And my dad said, we were on a tour around Lord's. He said, Milo, ask them about the colours of their flag. And I did, and the chap didn't know. Now,
did you know yet? Were you quizzing him? Or you still didn't know?
I was quizzing him, and my dad said he asked him about the colours. And I didn't know what they represented. I didn't know they were our colours. And the chap didn't know, so I was like, Dad, why did you tell me to do that? So that's the first time I discovered about the cricket. And then sort of 2016 is when I discovered of the whole, not just gin, the whiskey, the ale, the rum. That's when I first discovered sort of how broad we were and how big the actual operation was that we were doing for about 280 years or something like that.
So you just thought, oh, well, we once had these pubs and we once had some kind of gin. And wow, 280 years and one of the most important brands that ever existed in the early days. Yeah, very much so. And it's surreal. I sort of pinch myself every day because it's just the heritage of the brand is so magnificent. And it's something that is it's not something you can buy. It's just so unique, I suppose. And it's great to represent the brand and still be run by the same family. Of course. So tell us a little bit about the history.
Sure.
A lot about the history.
Yeah, I think it's a bit overwhelming, so I'll just, could be here for quite a long time. But the company started in 1736, and it started through a marriage of the Bowman family, and they were brewers, and it started with James Nicholson and Anne Bowman, and they got married in 1730, sorry. But at that time, it was sort of the gin craze, and people started... You could start a distillery by literally just putting a sign up outside your house saying distillery, and within 10 days you were legal. So we thought it'd be quite a good idea to start a gin company back then. So from sort of the 18th century, we grew, and then in 1808 we moved to St John's Wood, Clerkenwell, where we started our distillery, and the operation just got bigger and bigger, and we just kept on growing. I'm the Duke of Wellington. The Duke of Wellington was a massive fan. We did gin for the Houses of Parliament, things like that. The growth was massive, and then I guess that's just a very brief one. But then we can also sort of look at after that in 1873, we moved to a different distillery. We also used to do all the Nutrien spirit for Tanqueray and Gordon. We didn't just do our own; we did theirs too. The significance of Nicholson's gin was massive throughout sort of the 18th and 19th century.
So you said that Nelson was one of your big
yes
drinkers. So obviously it was a massive brand that you had so many famous people drinking it and writing about it.
Yes, yeah, very much so. I mean, we know that Duke of Wellington's a big fan, and I don't know if this is sort of true, this story, but my grandmother says that Nicholson's Gin had something to do with his funeral, and she's got the carriage door in her bedroom of that. And I think that was from the Duke of Wellington's funeral.
Wait, she has the carriage door?
Yeah, of the carriage that brought him down, I think. And that's something
So at least someone was there at the funeral and from your family and took the door.
Yeah, so that was a bit of I think that's a tale, though. I mean, it may not be true, but that's what she told me. So yeah, Duke of Wellington's a massive fan, and also did stuff for the Houses of Parliament too. Because Nicholson's are also not just distillers. There's a whole line of politicians. So in 1930, I'm not sure if you've seen the movie The Darkest Hour.
Oh yes, of course.
Do you know Brigadier Nicholson?
Oh, yeah.
So that's my great grandfather's brother. So he was also a politician. My grandmother's father beat Winston Churchill in the 1925 election. So they're all sort of MPs for a town called Petersfield, out in Hampshire. So we all had a big line of politicians at the same time.
So a lot of important people were not only drinking it, but your relatives became politicians and
William Nixon was the first to become an MP, and then it sort of carried on after that.
Mm-hmm.
It was 14 kids.
And so what was this tie to cricket?
Yeah, so so William Nixon was a very keen cricket player. He played for Middlesex, had about 150 caps.
Okay, what year are we talking?
We're talking about 1833.
Because there are a lot of Williams and Jameses in your family.
Yeah, it gets quite confusing. So William Nicholson started playing cricket in sort of 1833, 1840s. And in 1866, Lord's Cricket Ground was going through a bit of trouble. They weren't at that time a very wealthy club, and they couldn't pay for the freehold of the ground that they were on. It was up for development, and William Nicholson forwarded them the money to buy the freehold of Lord's, effectively saving the ground from developers. And this was the first out of 4 loans that he did. The second was for a hotel, which is now a stand, and the third was for nursery ground, which is just behind the media centre. And the fourth and the biggest loan was for the pavilion itself, which was known as the Gin Palace. And before 1866, the MCC's colours were blue and white. And after that, they adopted our brand colours, the bacon and egg. And sort of word out throughout the sporting world. If any cricket fans are listening, they'll know that bacon and egg is a really famous cricketing colours. And ever since then, the partnership has been going really strong. In 2016, William Nicholson was voted by the MCC as the saviour of Lord's. So it's a massive honour for us, and there's a huge portrait of him in the long room at Lord's, and that's what we relaunched in 2017 of them. So the relationship's still going very strong. They've been very supportive of us since we started. And
so I guess hopefully the gentleman who didn't know anything about the colours now knows something.
Yeah, now
about the colours.
I haven't seen them since, but I just thought if I do see him again, I'll just be do you remember that time? But yeah, so now hopefully he'll know, and I know too, the full story.
So you all were at the top of the world, really. Your gin was doing so well. So what happened that you lost it until 2012?
Well, I think the 70s were a very difficult time for the gin. Gin was sort of at its lowest in the 70s, and in World War II we were hit quite badly as it's quite a low grain. Grain was at a shortage after World War II, and also our distillery got hit by a couple of bombs in East London.
Were you still making gin during World War II?
Not really, no. It was quite a shortage. We weren't really producing at our maximum. And in World War One, our distillery was made for acetone for World War
so World War One, you were making acetone.
Yes, so we weren't making gin at that time. But I think what happened in 1960, we sold the distillery, and then we were under contract for about 20 years to the 1980s. And it was a combination of things, really. The market wasn't doing that well, and we wanted to sort of sell it, I suppose. So we also had the Nicholson Pub Group, which is about 80 pubs strong, and we sold it to Allied Breweries, and they were mainly interested in the pub group. So the gin was sort of taking a step back, and throughout the 80s it was slowly removed off the shelves and sort of taken out of production.
Well, before we get to modern day, you said something about making other spirits other than gin.
Yes.
What else were you making?
So we made Irish whiskey, and also rum, brandy, and also ale.
Were you making them in that distillery in Clerkenwell?
Yeah, so we moved...
Or St. John's Wood?
Yeah, so it was Bromley by Bow, 3 Mills Distillery, where we were based. You can still go there today. It's actually a film studio today where they film a whole bunch of other TV shows. And there's still a massive still at one of the studio locations, which is fantastic. And the size of it is just tremendous.
You mean the copper still is still
stills,
there?
They had about 6 of them that were just... I went there about a month ago, and it's just the operation of it is massive. So yes, we did orange gin, lemon gin, a lamplighter, which is just sort of a different version of our gin, and also an Old Tom, and also brandy, Irish whiskey, and ale. And
were those sold in the UK, or they were just sent out to the different markets?
So we were in about 100 different countries exporting. So we were around a lot of the world. The lamplighter was mainly our export product, but the rum went to the West Indies, the Irish whiskey obviously went to Ireland and things like that. So yeah, we were sort of all over the place. But we were very much a global brand in that sense. Yeah. So
when the gin craze ended, kind of in the 70s before it, its renaissance just about 12 years ago or so, you said you had pubs.
Yes.
So how did that come out?
Yeah, so in 1873, we were supplying a pub with some gin, and they couldn't keep up with their bills. So William Nicholson thought it'd be a good idea just to purchase the pub. So we purchased the pub, and the estate just grew from there. They're all called sort of gin palaces, and if you go into them today, there's about 50 in London, and they all make reference to William Nicholson as sort of the founder. And they all take gin very seriously within those pubs.
Do a lot of them still exist?
Yeah, so...
The actual buildings, I mean?
Yeah, so the original buildings, there's one on Strand Street called the Coal Hole, just by the Savoy, and that's one of the oldest buildings, and that's still one of the original Nicholson pubs, and it's a fantastic building. Also, by Blackfriars Bridge, there's a very small, sort of tiny one on the corner. It's also like a Grade 2 building, which is just really strong heritage. But those were also sold in the 80s. To M&B, so that's owned by Mrs. and Butler. So you owned all of those pubs? Yes. M&B have added a couple, but we owned the core of those pubs. And they were really gin palaces, not beer pubs. Yeah, they were mainly gin palaces, but we did also make an ale, a Nicholson Pale Ale, which was they still sell it today. It's the exact same recipe. And that's done by... Is it called Nicholson Pale Ale? Yeah, Nicholson Pale Ale. And if you go into a Nicholson pub, you'll see Nicholson 1736 London Dry on the mirrors. Pictured. Every pub has sort of like a placard of William Nicholson, the history of Lords, and the history of the brand in every pub. Still to this day? Still to this day. So they were also very supportive of us when we relaunched. And they love the story and they love everything about the gin. All right, so it was sold in the 80s and your family didn't really have anything to do with it. Yeah. Now let's talk about the revival of it. Yeah, of course. I guess your father and his cousin. Yes. Yeah, so my father... thought, this would be great. I think in 2010 so as I said, so the company was sold in the 80s. It was sold to Allied Breweries that then became Allied Domecq, and then that became Pernod Ricard. So they joined with Pernod Ricard. So the brand was sort of lost. A lot of trademarks and the recipes were sort of lost up in the air. And it ended up in New Zealand. So they just stopped making it altogether? They ceased production completely. And so it ended up in New Zealand. So my dad sort of went out. A lot of other people did try and purchase the brand before my dad. But these New Zealand people were quite stubborn. They wanted to find the right buyer. So my dad went out a couple of times and started the process of buying back the trademarks and the recipes. And yes, so in 2016... So was this something he had always wanted to do? I think at the back of his mind, yes, but it wasn't something that he was really wanting to do. Sort of in the early 2000s, sort of only 2010. So it was like a little, an itch. Yes. That he kept scratching, and then finally. Yes, yeah, exactly. It was quite. It was the right time. Yeah, quite a big itch, and he just thought, why not do it now? And it was also a great honor for my grandmother, as her father was the last chairman. And it was great for her to sort of see the brand revived in her lifetime again. So yeah, it was a great family story. But as I said, going back in 2016, we then started the process of going through all the old labels, all the old recipes. And it was took a couple of months to get everything sorted.
And who had all of this?
So Pernod Ricard had most of the recipes, and that was given to New Zealand chaps, and then we slowly gained them back after acquiring all the company. And we worked with, so the recipe, just to go back to the recipe, is a London dry recipe sort of dating back to 1830 when the style first came out. John Nicholson was a distiller, William Nicholson not so much. And it's said that he was very much at the forefront of pioneering the London dry style. So it's made to the exact same botanicals and recipe that would have been made in 1830. Obviously, we just tweaked it a bit to make it a bit more appealing to the current market, as it's obviously a bit different compared to back then.
And so you had all of this. You had all the recipes.
Yes.
Did you have them for every one of the spirits?
Yes, yeah, pretty much. And we just thought London Dry at the moment would be the best one to go with. So we sort of made a beeline for Thames Distillery and Charles Maxwell, who has a great reputation within the gin industry. And it was about sort of 6 or 7 months sort of trial and error, really working out the right measurements of each botanical. We worked with a panel of experts, sort of Desmond Payne from Beefeater, and further other experts within the industry.
Had they known about Nicholson Gin?
Yes, yeah.
This must have been a real coup for them.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
considering its history.
They all knew of Nicholson's Gin. I'm sure Desmond Payne in the 1970s all knew of Nicholson Gin. So they were all quite chuffed for it to be coming back. I think it's actually one of the oldest brands in the UK, or if not the oldest gin brand in the UK, and sort of still run by the exact same founding family is something that isn't really, like, there isn't much out there that's like that the same. So yeah, they were very chuffed to have it back, to say the least.
And so when they revived this, the recipe, did you all agree on, okay, this is the right one. We've hit it. Yeah,
pretty much. I mean, we all thought, wow, this is what the liquid should be, and the quality of the liquid is great. And the experts confirmed that the liquid was fantastic. How
long did that process take? From getting the recipe to having something that you thought, this is it?
About 5 months.
So not too long.
Yeah, 5 or 6 months it took that. A lot of sort of blind tastings, a lot of different variations. And then it was just a process of the bottle design was very much how can we sort of pay heritage to our great history, but also at the same time be appealing to the modern market. So our label is very traditional in that sense, but every small emblem on our label pays heritage to our history. And that's something really important to us, as we think it's very much a go-to for us. It's just to really pay heritage to what we are and who we are.
Since you kindly brought me a bottle right here, why don't we look at the label and you can tell me the different things so that if someone is looking at it, they can see what they mean.
Of course. So if we start on the top right, you'll see the MCC logo, and then underneath it you'll see a statue, and that statue is outside our distillery, and it's two arms crossing over each other. And that's because in 1906 there was a bit of a tragedy at the distillery where workmen were tracked underground, and one of the Nicholson family jumped down and tried to save them, but unfortunately they all passed away. About five of our employees, and also a Nicholson family member. So that statue's there, and it's still there to this day outside the distillery. And then if we go down, you'll see James Nicholson, a portrait of him.
And that's on the right.
That's on the bottom right. And then if we sort of skip across to the top left, you'll see William Nicholson and the pavilion up there. And then also on the bottom, skipping down to the bottom left, is our famous lion, which is quite well known. You would have seen it on Gordon's and also Portobello Road Gin. They have the exact same lion, and that's also, well, I mean, some say it's sort of to pay, because we're 33 years younger than Gordon's, and I don't know how much Portobello. So some people say that the lion's sort of a copying of Nicholson Gin because we were one of the firsts.
As they say, genius is steal.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, the wonderful lion on the crown. Now, as your label and emblem. Now, do you have records on how that was produced or why?
As the reason why, I'm not sure, but we do have a whole bunch of other labels that were all very much, so the red and the line are all very much the same to our old labels, and that wasn't really changed. It was just sort of bringing out the font a bit on the design, but that is all very much the same to what it was in sort of early days, 1830s, 1840s. So that part of the label is very much the same, and you'll see that in all our old labels too.
And since you are so kind to have the MCC here, have you been working with the cricket ground now?
Yes, yeah. So in 2017, when we relaunched in the Long Room, and they were the first to put us on sale. So we have a very strong relationship with them, with our house gin, obviously in the Long Room, and they've been very supportive of us. And we're looking forward to quite a very busy cricketing season this year with the Cricket World Cup and also the Ashes being hosted in England. And also, we sort of like to think that we're sort of the cricketers' gin due to the fact of our strong cricketing relations. And I guess when you're watching a cricket game, you might as well enjoy a good gin and tonic. So that's what we also like to do.
Of course. And now, speaking of gin and tonics and recipes, I know this, that Nicholson's gin was on everyone's list to make gin cocktails, and I'm talking Harry Craddock from the Savoy. That was the recommended gin, and the Waldorf.
Yeah.
You were really in every hotel, on every list.
Absolutely. I mean, I think sort of 1920s, 1930s, the main watering holes, sort of New York, Paris, and London. New York, especially, sort of during Prohibition and things like that. Nicholson Gin is one of the only 2 brands ever to be listed in the Savoy cocktail book. So they only normally they just say sort of 25 ml gin, but they specifically mention Nicholson Gin to be used in a classic martini or those type of cocktails, just because the liquid is so complementary to the other factors of the cocktail. Harry Craddock also does the same, and also the Waldorf Astoria, as you said, all mention Nicholson Gin repeatedly, which is a great honour for us. It's quite flattering, to be honest, to be mentioned in all these great cocktail books that bartenders to this day still refer to as sort of like the Bible for all cocktails and things like that.
Well, you've made me thirsty.
Yeah.
So should we pop it open and have some?
Absolutely.
Now, thanks to Milo, I will never be able to look at bacon and eggs the same again. If you go to lushlifemanual.com, I'll have a picture of the label, plus a list of Nicholson pubs for you to look for when next in London. Now it's time for our cocktail of the week. Our cocktail of the week is the Gloom Razor. This classic cocktail featured in the Savoy cocktail book and Harry's ABC back in the 1930s and demanded only Nicholson Gin. They've added a little raspberry syrup as a fresh alternative. Add all these ingredients to a mixing glass filled with ice. 50 ml of Nicholson Original Gin, 15 ml of dry French vermouth, 2 dots of absinthe, and 5 ml of raspberry syrup. Stir it well, and then strain into a cocktail glass. Garnish it with a lemon twist. You'll find this recipe and all the cocktails of the week at lushlifemanual.com, where you'll also find all the ingredients in our shop. I returned from a week in Charleston, South Carolina, and I made it through with a bag of grits and bourbon in tow. But not just any bourbon. Next time on Lush Life, we meet the man who knew if he were planning to make bourbon, it had to be different. Find out how he made that happen. Don't forget to check out my old-fashioned collection at lushlifemanual.com/merch. Until next time, bottoms up. Thanks for listening to the Lush Life Podcast. For more information and links to everything you've heard, plus a whole lot more, please visit lushlifemanual.com. Always remember the wise words of Oscar Wilde. All things in moderation, including moderation. And always drink responsibly. Okay, I said that last part. Theme music is by Steven Shapiro and used with permission. Lush Life is produced by Evo Terra. And I'm your drinking partner, Susan Schwartz. I'll see you at the bar.